or kids that are growing up with now AI, it's just going to be a natural thing. So that progression where all of us that didn't have it before and now can see the difference, we see that difference right now, but the ones that are growing up, it's going to be different.
Prompting will get you pretty far. Yeah, if it's a very good prompt, and that's why prompt engineering it's seen as a joke, because some people think it's just like typing out 2 sentences. But prompting makes a huge difference depending on how well you design it. So yeah, prompting is way bigger than I think people realize, like how far it actually gets you.
Any position using a kind of chat service effectively is going to suffer because teams are going to be that much more efficient. Using ChatGPT even for different functions, you can go between probably 20% more efficient to 75% more efficient. But yeah, the other thing I think is really exciting is when you look at these smaller models and, could those then be used, for a lot of these in-game experiences, or if you're working on kind of mixed reality and virtual reality still. Amazing for the gaming industry to have these sort of non-playable characters that are, you could literally have an in-depth conversation. Yeah. They have a backstory. They may be able to, voice whether, their backstory is a happy one or a traumatic one, or, it's very dynamic in terms of what that means for people experiencing, just engagement.
I do, because I've seen demos of that before. And obviously there's simple demos where they've got ChatGPT behind, an AI that the person's talking to. He's like in a tavern and he's talking to the barkeep, and, it's been prompted that you're a barkeep in old, King Arthur times, and, whatever the case is. And it does seem pretty good because you can ask him questions and you can go, the rowdy group that was here earlier, like Sir Lancelot kicked them out. And, it is kind of engaging and it's fun because obviously you can ask the AI any question, you're not just like scripted to like 4 different kind of questions that you can ask. But I do kind of wonder, that was a simple example, but just sort of listening to it though, I was, well, now that I know it's an AI, I kind of was almost disengaged though in a kind of a weird way, because I was like, well, it's just kind of GPT-4. Maybe it's more, I guess, this is a more introspective question, because I've been dealing with AI so much. When I know I'm talking to AI, I have that immediate sort of suspension of disbelief. Like, this isn't really a character I'm talking to. This is just AI responses. And I could do that myself asking ChatGPT now. I'm not sort of immersed as I would have been maybe if I thought maybe a human came up with the story. I don't know, feeling that out. And I've come across a few examples with AI music where someone sent me a link to like an AI generated song. And it sounds really good and impressive and it's got a good beat. But then back in my head, I'm still like, well, this is AI. Like, does it really like have any meaning behind it? No. It's a strange kind of thought process I go through nowadays when I come across AI. Like, I'm no longer super impressed. Well, I am obviously, like, this AI song is amazing. I'm impressed with it. But because I know it's AI, I'm just like, I get taken a step out of it. And I'm like, I don't know. It's interesting just sort of the route I'm going down with that. I don't know if you guys ever feel the same or.
That's a really important point that you're making, because it's almost like I have conversations with my kids who grew up in an internet age with a Google age. We grew up in a library age, microfiche. We had to go find our information. And so when my kids tell me, oh, I'm not sure how to do this, I'm like, you have basically an omniscient being in your hands, where I had to go to a library, look up, where this book was and figure it out. You can figure almost anything out in the palm of your hands within seconds. They're growing up in that environment to just know it's there. So people or kids that are growing up with now AI, it's just going to be a natural thing. So that progression where all of us that didn't have it before and now can see the difference, we see that difference right now, but the ones that are growing up, it's going to be different.
I agree as well. I mean, there's also the bias that we've built up from dealing with the early chat kind of interfaces where, again, there's latency, which disrupts. And I'm sure in that example that you would have seen, there would be bad latency. You ask the barman, all right, do something, and it's looking around for a while. You're like, no, this is not. Yeah. So just coming back to what we were talking about earlier, where, it's the small, not micro interactions, but the small little effects that they put in, like the sarcasm or irony or whatever is added into the conversation that makes you believe it's real. And if the answers are engaged at you look at any basic conversation, you'd want to know, you're not just interested in asking someone questions. You're wanting to interact. So there needs to be a bit of interest from the other person, maybe about what you think, and there's this sort of back and forth. And I think as soon as the balance is fine-tuned to get that, we're going to lose that bias that we've built up on, okay, I kind of understand what this means. And then you think of the people that aren't involved. I've spoken to a lot of people recently that have sort of said, is AI doing anything at the moment? And it's like, well, no, it's really going quickly. So if you had to show them what exists now, having not seen anything, they'd be like, wow, this is absolutely incredible, mind-blowing. Yeah. And you can see how people make the jump from, no, surely this is living because it does its job. So, or at least it's sentient because it's fine-tuned so much.
No, it makes sense. I mean, what you're saying is really like the impression I'm getting from my interactions with AI, because they're negative because it's so simplistic, right? Like it's really simple responses. The barkeep had really kind of, simple sentences that he was saying back to me. But you're right, if he had inflection or like a really interesting personality, it wasn't just like, yes, Sir Lancelot was here earlier, he kicked out those thugs, and he was more like, rambunctious and like, like a proper actor, then yeah, absolutely, I'd be way more engaged.
I mean, you imagine that if he was sort of, where are you from? And you're like, I've come from, I don't know, over the mountains. You're like, wow, did you not, what did you see there? And suddenly you're like, wow, this was building the whole backstory. And again, it's just going to, I think the industry is just going to affect not just gaming, but just, whether it's AI companions or it's, anything, even just, I found myself just opening ChatGPT conversation and going, well, tell me about, I want to know how quantum physics works, basically, give me the basic breakdown. And then, there's that sort of conversation that goes on from there that does a good job of sort of going back and forth and actually being really engaging. So fast forward a year or two, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah. Have you seen anything where you can train it on personalities? I mean, can you just put it in, can you have it listen to 1,000 hours of comedians, and just make it really funny? I mean, is that even possible to do it that way? I mean, that'd be hilarious to have a companion that's just cracking jokes all the time and making you laugh.
Well, I mean, from my understanding and dealing with the kind of large language models, you could prompt them, but training is something very separate. And I think that's where maybe coming back to the small language models again, you could do that. You could say, here's a lot of material and I'm actually going to train it. So that initial intake of all the content, and then from there, you're able to maybe pass it sort of, just fine tune it through passing it information. But yeah, I don't think at the moment it's that easy to, certainly no one really has the resources to train these massive, models. But I think you could, and certainly by prompting, you could get a lot of the way there.
Yeah, prompting will get you pretty far. Yeah, if it's a very good prompt, and that's why prompt engineering is kind of like a joke. Well, I mean, it's a joke. I mean, it's seen as a joke because some people think it's just like typing out 2 sentences. You're a rambunctious barkeep tavern and you're serving King Arthur, and that's what they think the prompt is. But prompting makes a huge difference depending on how well you design it, architect it, and it'll be paragraphs and paragraphs long and pages long of a really good prompt, which will really start fine tuning, but really tune sort of the responses that you're getting back. So yeah, prompting is way bigger than I think people realize, like how far it actually gets you. And that's a hard thing to sort of get to know how to use. I mean, it's a real kind of niche. It's like, the early days of SEO when that came out and everyone was like scrambling around for different sort of ways of optimizing your site and search engines. I feel like prompting is going through that right now too, where there's a lot of specialized knowledge and tricks and everyone's sort of knowing how to sort of use these prompts and generate them. And you can find some really good ones. And this guy's developed this one that you can copy in and, get a whole different sort of way of it working. And yeah, it's a really cool aspect, which I'd like to dig into soon and really understand more myself.
Is there anything else we want to discuss as far as the small language models or any other topics?
I don't think so. I think for me, that was the most exciting one. And just that I kind of came across lots of potential, lots to think about.
We can kind of end this on what jobs are going to be taken based on the latest release, or what jobs are being threatened, human jobs. And, I think that's from what translators probably have to be on the lookout. Data visualization, that's going to be something that I think is at high risk. I think customer support, that's been at the top of mind to
Well, can I cheat and say that almost any position using a kind of chat service effectively is going to suffer because teams are going to be that much more efficient. So if you needed, I mean, you can in some ways probably go, I don't know, Joe, what would you say? But using ChatGPT even for all different functions, you can go between probably 20% more efficient to 75% more efficient. I mean, so that means, okay, well, the opportunities that may have been needed as sectors grow won't necessarily be there. A lot fewer people would be able to do the job of what many could before.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the main takeaway. Yeah, just the efficiency of teams just goes way up, and you used to need 10 people, now you can get away with 5. I think they're, from a market perspective, they're trying to decide, okay, this entire market segment of jobs is going to go away. I think that really comes down to accuracy and how valued accuracy is in that role, because AI can still make mistakes and, hallucinate. And so you can't just sort of throw AI on top of a previous job that needed perfect accuracy, like a financial data analyst, for instance, who used to bring up big reports and which are very important to have pure accuracy on those. AI can make that analyst way more efficient, but you still need right now at least to make sure that it's very correct and you can't have mistakes in it. So I think roles like that will still be around for quite a while until those models improve at least.
Yeah, you can't replace the talent. I guess that's the main thing. You still require talent, but that talent can do a lot more.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, because that's the double-edged sword, where the people that are really good and can recognize when something is wrong or right, and they leverage AI, they will become the 10x producer within the organization. But the people who are so average and don't use it, they're going to be obsoleted pretty quickly. And then you've got the managers who are hiring these people who think, oh, I can just get one person to do the job of 10. And they hire the wrong person to do it, thinking that, I can just save the company a ton of money by just hiring one person to do a job. That takes actually more people to do it right. So there's going to be some of that on both sides that's going to be a problem. But yeah, the fact that just how many people that I've spoken to that have not seen it yet, it's scary when you show them how accurate and how fast things work at the moment.
And if you're not using it, start. Like it's like you don't want to wait because you're going to be left behind.
I wonder if people are apprehensive because of the chat interface and have to type out full sentences, and it feels kind of slow and clunky. I wonder when as we see with GPT-4o, as the real-time kind of voice feedback comes in, if it's going to have a huge spike in popularity just because it's so much more accessible for sort of the average person on the street to engage with it. Whereas right now it's kind of like a techie thing.
It's funny because typing is a barrier to actually using it. But then you realize some things you don't actually want to talk about. So if you're looking at code or you're looking at a strategy, you want to go into detail. You need a lot of text. Whereas I kind of find the conversation interesting if you're wanting to learn about a fact, or you're wanting to maybe vet something and say, look, I've got an idea. This is the approach I want to take. Can you see any holes in it? Where do you see I could be going wrong? And that's fantastic for conversation. I think they're sort of those two different channels have very different kind of use cases for them, at least what I've found.
So as a user experience designer, the better the experience, whether that interface is voice or is it visual or is it typing, the better. But, with interacting it in both ways, I did notice that through voice, it doesn't pick up pauses. So as I'm speaking and trying to finish a sentence or a prompt, my pause trying to think about it, it automatically reacts, and that gets frustrating very quickly. So I end up typing things that are a little bit more complex. So once they kind of solve that, where the AI detects where you're not quite done with the sentence, lets you pause and finish. I mean, it does pick it up. You can just say it again, but it does get frustrating when it does it a few times, especially in a kind of noisier environment when I'm in a car. It picks up all the other noises and it interrupts my conversation and train of thought.
I believe that is configurable though. And I know that was one of the 4.0 releases that's coming as well, where it kind of picks up on the end of, you're sort of wrapping up, and maybe it's the inflection of, asking a question or doing something, which it is. But I do think even with the the GPT-4, there's a way to actually stop it from answering immediately. I was looking at the settings the other day. But it is, I mean, coming back to the user experience, I think it is, I mean, that's nice and simple. And one thing I picked up as well, which was nice, is if you're talking about asking for a code reference or something like that, it'll explain a solution and then say, look at your chat history for the code. So, you're not interested in talking about, all right, open this, open C's, declare your variable. Like it's very much, okay, you can see an example of what I think the code would look like, but, we're talking about it now. So it's almost recognizing that it's more high level when you discuss something.
So if you're feeling behind on AI, you have to tune into our podcast, of course.
We'll keep you up to speed.
Where you're going to learn a lot more. Yes, exactly. That's all you need. Everything else is noise. But I think with that, we'll wrap it up with this episode. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. And, definitely suggest any kind of future episodes, any topics you want to hear us talk about. We've got a lot of experience with the UX product, obviously integration of AI into different enterprise software, and just dealing with making things better when you integrate it into your software products. So with that, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Like, subscribe, vote, whatever you need to do to help the channel out, and appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye, everybody.